What comes to mind when you think of copper? Coins, plumbing, electrical wiring, roofing, all very familiar uses for it. But you might be surprised to know that copper could quite possibly save your life. In February of 2008, the Environmental Protection Agency approved the registration of copper as an antimicrobial material. This groundbreaking event marks the first time the agency has allowed public health claims to be made about a solid metal. Dr. Harold Michaels, Senior Vice President for Technology and Tech Services for the Copper Development Association, explains.
We've demonstrated in the laboratory that copper, brass, and bronze begins eliminating germs upon contact and actually eradicates 99.9% of harmful bacteria within 2 hours.
What does this mean for you and me? Meet Maureen and Marie Daly. In January of 2004, their mother Johanna went into the hospital for what everyone thought would be a routine shoulder operation.
Well, ironically, Mom had fears of medical care and fears of hospitals. She really did suspect that they were not safe places to go. And she voiced that to the surgeon. She told him, I'm kind of nervous about having this. He said, Johanna, you're a young woman. I do this every day. This is a routine surgery.
Instead, Johanna became terribly ill. After 4 months of living with excruciating pain, she died.
My mother entered the hospital on January 19th for surgical repair of her shoulder. She returned to the hospital and the infection was diagnosed on January 26th. By February 14th, she was a quadriplegic on a ventilator and a feeding tube. And on May 23rd, she died, all as the result of the infection.
In recent years, major news media have featured stories like the Daly families. They center on a deadly bacteria called methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA. It's been called the superbug because it's resistant to so many different antibiotics.
I've been a registered nurse for 23 years. Every single person who practices nursing, practices medicine, takes a vow to do no harm. Every chance I get to educate or comment or correct someone on hand washing or isolation techniques or aseptic technique, whatever you want to call it, I take. I use my mother and my mother's situation. I use it as a tool. And I'm on the front line. And I try to take that to heart. It's been very difficult as a nurse going through the loss, watching someone you love drift away from something that your colleagues could have prevented.
There are thousands of other stories similar to Maureen's and Marie's, and they are not limited to large inner-city hospitals, but are happening in many types of medical treatment centers in the United States and around the world. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that hospital infections in the U.S. result in nearly 100,000 deaths each year. That's more deaths than from AIDS, breast cancer, and car crashes combined. Additionally, it's estimated that infections acquired in hospitals cost a staggering $20 to $30 billion annually. Dr. Michael Schmidt, professor of microbiology and immunology at the Medical University of South Carolina, explains.
In concert with using copper to help break that chain of infection, the other standard things that we're doing in the hospital, of course, is washing our hands. After you interact with an individual in a hospital or a healthcare setting, you're supposed to wash your hands after you interact with them. You're supposed to wash with your hands before you interact with them. We routinely are cleaning each and every one of our surfaces in our hospital rooms. Good old soap and water works wonders at debriding the microorganisms that are on the surface. But if you fail to get them all, they're still going to be there because they can live on those plastics and stainless steel materials for a very long period of time.
As a matter of fact, bacteria can live on a variety of surfaces, like stainless steel door handles, stair railings, and faucets, making it easy to be picked up and spread. A medical task force has developed recommendations to increase infection prevention in hospitals. They include more thorough monitoring, disinfection, and education practices. But there's a brand new weapon on the horizon. Enter copper. Covering touch surfaces with copper alloys can help reduce microbial contamination associated with the risk of hospital-acquired infections. The Environmental Protection Agency has found that when cleaned regularly, antimicrobial copper alloy surfaces kill greater than 99.9% of bacteria within 2 hours and continue to kill more than 99% of bacteria even after repeated contamination. Similar findings are expected from clinical trials currently being conducted at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the Medical University of South Carolina, and the Ralph H. Johnson VA Medical Center in Charleston. Although the Copper Development Association has been investigating the antimicrobial property of copper for the past 5 years, ancient civilizations had used copper thousands of years ago in a variety of ways to treat infections. In the near future, don't be surprised when you hear reports that the newest breakthrough in healthcare is not a new chemical, not an aerosol spray, but a solid material, as old as the earth itself.